Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Enterprise AI Unlocked, the Roundtable podcast where we explore how AI is reshaping the modern enterprise, one decision, one workflow, and one agent at a time. I'm your host, Paul Brzozowski, co-founder of Olakai-ai, the enterprise AI ROI and governance platform that helps organizations measure, govern, and scale their AI deployments. Quick reminder for new listeners on what the Roundtable is. Once a month, I sit down with people I trust to cut through the noise in enterprise AI. And we tackle one big topic to no scripts, no vendor pitches, just practitioners telling you what we are actually seeing in the market. Back with us is Jason Smith. Jason is the AI lead for EMEA at Publicis Groupe, where he drives AI strategy and transformation across one of the world's largest communications groups. He's also a strategic advisor at Lyra Labs and co-chaired at Fino's Responsible AI Working Group as well. If anyone lives in the messy middle between AI strategy and actual delivery, it is Jason. Welcome back.
Cheers. Good to be back, Paul.
Likewise. And Rob Saltrese, co-founder and COO of Lyra Labs. Rob runs Lyra Pulse, which measures how AI actually behaves once it is inside the operation. A Lyra Leaders, which works with boards on AI readiness. Rob, great to have you back as well.
Good to be back, buddy. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Rob. All right, here's the topic. This one is current. It is messy, and it is going to make a lot of CIOs uncomfortable. Today, we are talking about Claude Mythos, and the lesson is it just handed every enterprise running on AI strategy. Quick recap, in case anyone missed it. April 7, 2026, Anthropic announced Claude Mythos. It was a preview. A new frontier model so capable at finding and exploiting software vulnerabilities that Anthropic chose not to release it publicly. Instead, they stood up Project Glasswing, a tightly controlled consortium of about 40 organizations, including Apple, Microsoft, Google, AWS, NVIDIA, JP Morgan, and so on. Reports say Mythos has surfaced thousands of zero-day vulnerabilities, including one in OpenBSD that had been hiding for 27 years. And then, within roughly the same week of announcement, Bloomberg reported that unauthorized users had already gained access to Mythos through a third-party vendor environment. A Discord group using publicly available techniques, leveraging data from the earlier Mercer breach, allegedly with access to other unreleased Anthropic models as well. So here's the question I want us to sit with today. If the most safety-conscious frontier lab in the world, gaining its most powerful model behind 40 hand-picked partners, was compromised through a third party in its first week, what does that tell every enterprise that is rushing to bolt the next precious AI capability onto their stack? Because the headline story is Mythos, but the real story, the real idea sits around its foundations. Let's get into it. Jason, let me start with you. You read the story in the context of an enterprise AI lead. When the Mythos news broke and then the breach reporting followed, what was your honest first reaction? And what should the press release say? What did you actually think at the time?
Yeah, well, I had two honest reactions. One was the Frontier Labs are definitely sat on something that's several steps down the line, and Anthropic is sat on one, then I'm sure the others are. And so that was my first reaction. And then my second reaction, when I had a little bit more time to think about it, was another. What does this do for the price of risk? And what I mean by that is at every level, right? So how governments perceive risk, how insurance markets perceive cybersecurity risk, which is primarily based on the fact that, a very niche group of humans would be able to kind of achieve the sort of stuff that Mythos, or they claim Mythos, can achieve. That's probably right. They probably can do that as a model. And then all the way down to companies, in terms of companies utilizing those models. What does that do for risk, not just for cybersecurity, but maybe some other capabilities that maybe we haven't thought of. So all the way down the chain, I was like, oh my God, this completely upends the whole kind of risk scenario. So those are my two honest reactions, Paul.
I guess it's a moment of that shit happens, right? We'll unpack what exactly happens. But I love that angle, because my reaction was, okay, let's talk about the foundations. What does this actually mean in a little bit of a greater scale of enterprise AI deployment? You have more, it's not broad scale approach, but I love that you pinned a specific topic here. So we will unpack, but let's go to Rob real quick. Rob, Lyra Pulse sees AI behavior inside operations every day. That's what you guys do for a living. When you see a story like Mythos, frontier capability, restricted access, breach through a third party in week 1, what does that tell you about the state of enterprise AI right now as of today?
Well, it's kind of a bit like Jason with his own moment. The same thing exists of it's now just painting a big picture of the unknown unknowns are only getting bigger. If we have more and more powerful tools, I mean, even on the last episode, we talked at some of the latest releases of the models back in only February. It used to be a 6-monthly, yearly thing, a bit like mobile phones, etc., from that time frame. But they're pushing the boundaries, and they're all going for extreme growth and development. So it shows, one, how they're pushing, two, that they're not understanding what that pushing means to the open market and its capabilities, right? Because you can look at, these things are all ambivalent, but you can take the good and the bad. So obviously a lot of people out there love predicting the bad of what AI can do, and many people see the good and the benefits that it can do. But I guess it lies somewhere in between. It's more about who is it in the hands of. So there's some big things there around the protection piece, but I just think it shows that these models are only going to keep changing, and we could be on this subject every time we do an episode, which would be phenomenal, but also scary. People have to plan for the unknown unknowns now, which is pretty much impossible because of the phrase in itself. And really, it passes on 2 layers of responsibility. One, to those organizations that are building them, but will they take that up? Will any of the governments around the world or the AI investigation organizations in front that exist, will they push that back to them a tad to make sure that they have to go through certain processes first? Maybe. That'll be interesting to see. But at the moment, it is so wide open. Yeah, we've talked about the fact that the genie was out the bottle a few years ago with Gen AI. This is another even bigger stark warning of, okay, now what? But you really need to start putting some things in place.
Opening, Rob. I guess we might talk a little bit about the FOMO trap. Let's unpack why enterprises chase newest before proving last. That's how I feel, just maybe elaborating a little bit on my initial opening. I feel that there is that pressure. I don't know exactly where it's coming from. That's what I want to ask you, Rob and Jason, today. But it seems that there is that hype always that we try to follow. We, for whatever reason, see a greater value in what's next versus have I actually done my work? Have I got my foundation? And they said, we chuckled last episode about, is my data ready for AI? We're not talking about that. This is abundant topic on this podcast. But seriously, why are we chasing before building the foundation right? And Rob, I want to hear, because you talk to a lot of C-suite in your dailies. What is the boards asking? Is it the right questions? Are they the ones pushing the FOMO? Who drops the hypothesis? And where's this pressure coming from in your experience? Tell us more.
Well, interestingly, and I know Jason will agree with it, it's probably not 99% of boards, in all honesty. Their actual lack of knowledge around AI is fundamentally a huge problem, right? And that's where we really should be looking at. That is an enormous gap. And C-suite themselves, right? And that equally then includes investors and shareholders, chairmen, chairwomen, whatever it may be. They now have a fiduciary duty to their organizations, to themselves, to what they do, to bring themselves up to speed on this, to help then manage that and how it impacts their businesses. Because if they don't have that knowledge, they won't be able to. They can provide no decent input. And you might end up jumping on a bad with taking a frontier model, right? For example, why wouldn't you? You might think it's the next exciting thing. The real pressure comes from the way Silicon Valley's been going for the last 20, 25 years, from the way investment works, from that part now from VCs, from large family office, from huge funds. The pressure is immense, like nothing we've ever seen. And that pushes on them to drive and push beyond extremes we've ever seen. The need for revenues and money that we've never seen. It kind of fits in the mixing within greed. They're all massively competitive. We won't even get onto the other story of Musk and Altman, but it links to it in the fact that they're also far removed from what they're trying to really do to just be the best and be the fastest and be the quickest out to market. So I actually think a lot of that is in internal pressure. And by internal, I mean from the structure of those organizations, how they're seen in the market, the investor-led side predominantly would be my take on it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Jason, a bit of a practical question, no sensitive, obviously, expectations, but you obviously sit in the inside of one of the largest communications groups. And whenever Mythos type headline drops, it doesn't have to be Mythos, it doesn't have to be April 7. But what happens in a typical large organization in your experience is that drawing CISO, CIO, emergency meeting, does this come up in your day-to-day agendas on days like this? Tell us a little bit more from the practitioner's perspective as a leader, what those headlines and then those reminders do to us inside.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are multiple layers within the enterprise. I don't think it set the alarm bells off at board level. And what I mean by that is I don't think it set any alarm bells off with the kind of FOMO question around the board's driving this. But sadly, I also don't think it set off any alarm bells around what it did for risk and governance either. Because my experience of boards are outside of Publicis, particularly is, I don't think, sweeping generalization, but I don't think that they're quite as clued up as they should be. Really, it's a bit of a gap. Then there's this layer of, the other problem is that when we talk about AI within enterprises, it's largely still driven by technology. So it sits predominantly and driven by a CTO or a technical office. And FOMO exists there, particularly with certain CTOs. It's like, I've got to get my hands on the latest model. I've got to do this, got to get that. And so there probably would have been a hint of, I can't wait to get my hands on this. Let's drive towards that in that layer. And that's very much a kind of like fear of missing out there with those teams. And we all know that that's not really the problem. Like when it comes to AI, and Gen AI in particular, it's much more around people and change and that kind of stuff where you're going to really see value, not technology. But I do think at the moment it sits with those guys and there's a real FOMO thing going on there. And then also within enterprises, there'll be then a range of reactions on a spectrum from, I know some of my colleagues reacted to me in a very frightened way of what's coming down the road. And their minds will probably race in beyond the particular instance of cyber risk, but like probably, well, if these models have greater capabilities, that probably means they can do a host of other things better than the existing models. And then there'll also be a rump of people who are real AI evangelists within an enterprise. They like the latest model. They want to kind of drive that forward, a little bit like the technologists. That's what's driven quite a lot of shadow AI within organizations. And they'll probably be like super excited to get their hands on it. So you kind of have a very messy picture being presented at an enterprise level across these kind of different layers and different spectrums within each layer.
It's an interesting spin on FOMO. What I heard, Jason, a few angles. We might actually want to revisit shadow AI topic on its own. It's fascinating, actually, especially when you get visibility into it. That just drives so much AI strategy on its own, possibly, if you use it right. But dropping shadow AI. Let's revisit a little bit the FOMO of the initial probe. I guess my reaction to your feedback, Jason, is this. I'd like actually those headlines to drive a little bit of change and act as a reminder. Whether this happens or not, obviously, is probably dependable on our experiences and then enterprises itself. So I hope that there is still some energy that helps. On the flip side, yeah, we should not be living in the panic mode, right? Especially if this is not necessarily affecting us. News, just by definition of the news, should be more dramatic to drive that interest, right? So we don't want to be living in the drama space anyways. So interesting spin. I really like the way you framed it, Jason, and I'd love to revisit shadow AI topic eventually, because that is quite a deep hole on its own. So I guess we can go back to foundation. Let's talk about foundations first. This actually seems to be turning a little bit into the AI governance topic. We're not here to talk about mythos. We are here to jump on a hot topic and news and then scare everyone. But actually, what we are doing? We are going back to the all good governance. And I know, Jason, that you had built governance frameworks inside complex orgs before. So, question. If a CIO asked you tomorrow, not today we are wrapping it up, right? Before we even look at the next frontier model, what do we need to have in place? What is the shortlist? What is your to-do? Not obviously 200-page framework. What is the actual shortlist, Jason?
Yeah, it's a great question. It does take me back to something that Rob said actually, which is unknown unknowns. It was a good while ago now, probably coming up to 2 years ago. With an ex-colleague who's now at Lyra Labs, we were trying to figure out. We were probably a little bit ahead of our time, but we were trying to figure out the implications of these models for organizations and so on, because it all felt quite more new then. But we're entering that phase now, as you say, where the capability is clearly a capability jump. So what we did is we put together a bit of a toolkit, and the starting point is values, right? That it just kept coming back to values, like what are the values of an organization? And then what we did is we combined, we got into systems thinking and utilized some tools, cannibalized a load of tools. But the aim of what we were trying to do with this toolkit was to try and uncover unknown unknowns. So there's such a thing as the iceberg model, and everyone knows the iceberg analogy, right? It's deeper below the water than it is above the water. And there are models which we cannibalized and kind of rebuilt and reframed in the context of AI, utilizing systems thinking to allow you to start looking at those layers that are under the water. And it also takes quite a wide lens as well. So you can look at it from the perspective of just your company. You can look at it from the perspective of your employees, but you can then look at it to your customers, to wider society, and so on and so forth. And what we envisaged was multidisciplinary teams coming together and using these models to start to map risks, unknown risks. And then once you've mapped potential unknown risks, you can then start to kind of go, okay, well, how might we, so using proper design principles, how might we design some governance that might address that, or a test to address that, or whatever it might be. And so we had a whole kind of suite of tools that we'd put together to do this. And people thought we were a bit mad when we did that, because they were like, well, we know the risks, we can just catalog them. And we are now entering this phase, because the models are so capable, where if a CIO asked me tomorrow, you've got to work on this, what would you do? I would say, right, well, first of all, are we really clear on the values? And if we're not, then we need to get those sorted out. And then secondly, I would say I need to put together a multidisciplinary team, not just technology people. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dust off this toolkit and go into a room with a whiteboard and lots of post-it notes and start working through what this might mean using, as I say, systems thinking, because that's one thing that I've seen missing in the whole AI conversation is systems thinking. So that's what I would do.
I'll pick up a couple of lines here, if I may. System thinking, I like the way you put it. For me, this is all about change management. And your story 2 years ago, we would be just jumping at anything that moves AI forward because, yeah, the models were not that great. So anything next was an actual hope. There was a lot of more hope to look forward for versus now we're really established. I probably will eat my words in a couple of years when we jump on this type of podcast and have the same conversation. It was like, can you imagine this Opus 4.7 so primitive? Because it just seems like we're moving in the right direction so much. And now we have just made it, right? It's 2026, end of April, we made it. And we're just scratching the surface at the end of the day. So, but 2 years ago versus today is a lifetime in the AI transformation. And I feel like people just, and the organizations haven't followed the systems thinking, the change management, the AI transformation as a science itself. And I like the shortlist, very practical, based on years of experience delivering it. That's what makes it rather clear. Some people might think, oh, it actually should be a very more robust, comprehensive approach. And yeah, in the micro world, it will, right? But from the plan, from the shortlist perspective, it's just perhaps 8 to 10 points. And each point will have its own swim lane and track and story to tell. So I like that a lot. Rob, you dropped something in between the lines that I want to double down. There was a measurement question. Do boards actually measure what they have? Do they know? Because in my experience, most enterprises cannot tell you how the AI is actually behaving. That's what I actually do for a living. So in your perspective, what would be the minimum viable measurement layer an enterprise needs before they earn the right to deploy the next big thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not even just, we didn't even start with a measurement layer. The first thing you've got to have is kind of almost to Jason's point. Who are you as a business, and do you want to behave responsibly? Does responsible AI mean something to you? If it does, you need to set things like clear AI policies, guidelines, frameworks. And then one of the first things they should do is go and do a risk analysis. Like now, whilst you put those things in place, is you do an AI risk analysis. You've got to do an audit of what you have, what is going on, because there invariably be all sorts of tools and stuff and just plugged in all over the place without any thought or attention. There'll be shadow AI going on. You need to look at all that exposure first. So the very first things I would say would be go down that path, because you have to get these things set up. But for the boards and the CEOs, this comes back to, do you want to be a business that deploys it in the right way? Do you want to be responsible and an ethical user of AI? That's almost got to be the first thing you need to discuss. Because if you are, and does it mean something to your business? Does it mean something to your employees? Does it mean something to your customer base? Because this is kind of what we're exposing now with this, the capability of the hacking side of things. So that's what I would say. That's where you have to be. That's got to be the starting point for sure, is you start there. Risk assessment, AI audit risk assessment, put in policies in place, put in those frameworks, and then starting to create a plan for going forwards that connects into your AI strategy. But again, because most people do not have a clear AI strategy, they wouldn't know where to knit it in. So it forces people to kind of really rethink how they've gone about any of this in the last 2.5, 3 years, which invariably has been haphazard. It has been these poorly implemented pilots, projects, tools, and technologies. Start again. You can, but now's the time. If this doesn't give you a real nudge in the right direction, I'm not really sure what will. It's almost like this kind of apt timing is like the Chernobyl moment, right? There were huge risks there. They fundamentally knew that the way they'd built the RBMK reactors was wrong. The steps were wrong. It then got exposed and they didn't say anything for some time, right? We've now had this exposed, what Mythos can do. And by the way, there are other models that are free out there that can almost do the same thing, because they've talked about that too. So now that's there. What are you going to do?
Like that answer. You jumped very quickly to really what this topic is all about, the foundations. We circle around governance, AI governance throughout as well. And you jumped into the risk assessment. So visibility, what's happening, what's flowing through the ecosystem, where the risks might be. I actually want next round, the open round, to go back to that exact chain of thinking, because There's one detail of the Mythos story I personally cannot stop thinking about. Essentially, the breach did not happen at Anthropic level, right? It happened really at the third-party contractor that had access to the model evaluation environment. And reportedly, the group also has access to other unreleased models. So the question might be, does any enterprise listening to us right now have an actual map of the AI vendor and the risks associated with it? That's what you framed ahead of this round. So maybe I can probe a different angle of this question, because you, Rob, already gave us insight. And Jason, I'm actually looking at you. Who, in your opinion, today actually owns vendor risk for AI tools in most enterprises today? Is it security? Is it procurement? Is it the AI lead? Is it no one? What do you see?
Yeah, that's the other issue. It's problematic all the way from the top down, right? So you've got a lot of this stuff is exposed at board level, and then you can sometimes it sits with a kind of CIO team. Sometimes it sits with a procurement team. Sometimes it's just not clear where the boundaries are between the two. I mean, yeah, it can be really messy. And that's the problem, right? Because of that messiness, with no one really taking ownership of it, or taking ownership of some bits and then somebody else is taking ownership of other bits, it's very easy for this sort of stuff, the big picture stuff, to fall between the cracks. And the other problem that you have then with different groups, like a CIO team and a procurement team will probably be very conservative with a small c, and then a CIO team, this is a generalization, but might be less conservative with the small c and a little bit more gung-ho type of scenario. So yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, Paul, other than it's a bit of a mess and there are gaps all
I
over
think
the
it's the
place.
best answer I could hope for, because you had just confirmed a trend that just happens almost every day at my office. So I'm with you. So running a AI startup, deploying AI technology, it means that you often establish new category. It also means you're exploring large enterprises from multi-threading perspective. If you want to put a sales hat on for this answer, you need to understand who owns AI in the first place. It's a different way of asking question, who owns security behind it. And I'm with you on that, Jason. It's messy. Some organizations, maybe 5% of them, large ones, I mean, CAIO, it's an actual persona, right? They had developed that, and it's typically a little bit more ahead of the curve. There's a little bit more ownership in that space. Fair enough. But we're not going to focus on 5%, right? This is the answer. 1 in 20 will have that ownership already established in that council. Now, it will be CISO, it will be CIO, or it will be just some new team that has just been formed of any AI leaders that lead teams to deploy AI. And now you're dropping a lot of security on top of them, and CISO, I'm sure, in the background to help them out. But it's just going to be messy. Like, you have so many voices, not people necessarily are evaluating companies or vendors on the next big thing from the perspective of security. They will run the filter for CISO eventually. But that is a good statement to drop it before the lightning round. It's just messy, and each organization might be different, and it's difficult to assess who owns it. Obviously, ownership is defined in every organization to some degree, but we can't inspect tens of thousands of companies at the same time to understand what is the biggest trend right now. So if you, the listeners, if audience knows, or you have some feedback to share, would love to hear it, and let us know, what are you seeing either in the industry, in your organization. Obviously, not looking for any sensitive data, but it is an interesting topic to unpack as well. All right. Lighting round. And the reminder, lighting round is that one bold prediction or one sharp piece of advice. Each of us get 30 seconds. Spoiler alert, everyone goes 75 or more. And the idea is that we want to see what this month, you, Jason, what sharp piece of advice do you have to share?
In light of Mythos and the issue around risk and pricing of risk, I would be advising boards to get a handle on this pretty damn quickly. And if they're not sure where to go, where to start, they should get somebody in to address the board on it specifically, and then figure out what it does to their risk and capital allocation.
Wonderful. I'll take it. Rob?
Apart from echoing Jason's thoughts, I thoroughly agree with, but because they're incredibly pertinent, it is now you've got to have your quick lines of what steps you're going to take now. And that starts with, I think, the audit trail. How do you want to be perceived as a business? What steps you're going to put in place now to manage and understand every bit of tool you got in the business? How are you going to manage things going forward? What is your AI culture going to be like? And perhaps, just to the point you two were just talking about, you probably need to have some sort of AI task force stroke a red team, right? Who is going to be your red team? And that is where actually the buck should lie, is there needs to be from boards and CEOs the power and the confidence to go, we're going to have this new function that will manage all of that. So it'll take a little bit of CISO, a little bit of CIO and CTO. It's going to have a little bit of procurement, a little bit of CEO lens in, but they are actual experts. They don't fight, they debate and get things done at speed because we've seen how fast everything comes. And they are the ones that will be crucial to this, because otherwise, as you say, it becomes messy and fragmented. And that's where we're going to have the gaps and risks. So I urge people to look at something like that, be ahead of the game, hire the people who are out there because there are not many, and get that ball rolling, because something else is only going to happen in the next 2 months that we're already unaware of.
Oh, it's already happening. We just don't know, right?
Exactly.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. So I'll take my 30 seconds. Less of a prediction. I'm not a researcher. More on advice, if I can offer one. No FOMO. Stick to the basics. Get your foundation right. Don't forget about AI governance from the design perspective. It's part of the architecture, because that's what I do for a living. I believe that measurement is part of the design and architecture as well. Measure what you have before you jump to the next big thing. And if you can achieve all those, quite basic and boring points of building your AI program or your innovation, you are set to outperform most. And the last one, ownership. Have clear ownership. Whether that is head of AI, whether that's CAIO council, whether it is the AI leader in your small organization, have that ownership that actually is responsible for delivering responsible AI as well. And that's what would be my shop of advice. No FOMO, governance, measurement, and don't chase something you don't understand yet. Let it sink first. All right. And with that, this is a wrap on episode 2 of the Roundtable. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Rob. But here's what I'm taking away real quick. I think I put my advice around the closing thoughts, but Mythos was just a fantastic reminder that AI is innovating, is very capable. There's still a bit of a mystery because I haven't touched Mythos. It's just a lot of bold statements and it's very vulnerable. Exposure of 27 years of software development. Perhaps, most likely, why would we not trust an established brand like Anthropic or researchers that already touched it? We have to trust someone. But again, we live in our own AI bubble. Whatever the bubble is, your job is not to make it burst. So at the end of the day, we are responsible for our own change management and our own performance. And typically, running too fast often ends in the wrong corner. Next month, on the Roundtable, we will tackle another topic. I don't know what the topic exactly is. I'll surprise you, Rob, you, Jason, and probably myself. But to everyone listening, if you enjoy this conversation, follow Enterprise AI Unlocked, the Roundtable, wherever you get your podcast, and let us know which topics you want us to take on next as well. I'm Paul Brzozowski, co-founder of Olakai-ai. Jason, Rob, thanks for doing this. Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Cheers.